So excited that everybody is able to join us this afternoon. We have not actually had a webinar since December. Hey, Caroline?
Yeah, it's been a while.
It's been a
Good
while.
to see everybody.
So we'll just quickly introduce the hosting team here. We have the wonderful support of the Calgary Regional Consortium. So Shannon is our tech guru from the back end. We have Al Chapman, who is Alberta Mentoring Partnership lead. We have Quinton, who is our AMP tech lead. We have Courtney Cox from just actually started AMP in the last week here as our project lead for mentoring youth and youth transitioning out of care, and our co-facilitator Caroline Gosling, who is our AMP community member at large who does many of our webinars. So we would like to welcome everyone here today. Caroline, did you want to do the land acknowledgement, or did you want me to do that?
You can just continue on with that.
Oh, okay. Spanning generations, acknowledgement of the land is a traditional custom of Indigenous people when welcoming outsiders onto their land and into their homes. To build respectful relationships, acknowledging the land is an important part of reconciliation. In the spirit of respect, reciprocity, and truth, we acknowledge we are on and supporting mentoring for youth in the traditional territories across Alberta and the many First Nations from Treaties 6, 7, and 8, the Métis of the 8 Alberta settlements, and Inuit people whose footsteps have marked these lands for centuries. These lands are the traditional meeting grounds and homes for many Indigenous people for generations. We are grateful for the traditional knowledge keepers and elders who are still with us today and those who have gone before us. We are all treaty people, beneficiaries of the peace and prosperity the treaties brought, and committed also to working towards the equity and justice the treaties promised. So welcome. We have many guest speakers joining us today, and our first two guest schools have commitments at 4:30, and so we want to honor that and allow them to present their wisdom and knowledge to you today. And so we're going to get started right away with that. But before we do that, as we're getting ready, if you would like to enter your name, where you're from, and your role, one thing that you hope to get out of this webinar, into the chat box. We'll come back to that a little bit after the presentations. So your name, where you're from, your role, and one thing you'd like to get out of the session today. Welcome Hassan from the Dollar Detectives. Michelle is our vice principal from Brooks Composite High School. Oh, and next year you're going to be the EAL lead, so a transition for you.
Hope from Sylvan Lake, mentoring coordinator.
Adelaide from Lethbridge School Division Central Office. Welcome. Okay, well, welcome.
Perfect.
So today we're going to learn about some of the stories from the field, and we're going to talk about some mentoring resources and some group sharing. And today our session is all around supporting refugee, immigrant, and newcomer children and youth. So to start our afternoon off, we'd like to introduce Andrea Schell, principal of St. Joseph's Collegiate School in Brooks, and Janelle Petkus. She is the English as an additional language coordinator at the school, and she's responsible for the intake and programming for our new Canadian students. So I'm going to stop sharing so that you can start sharing and start with your PowerPoint.
Lovely. Okay, let's just see here. Thank you for bearing with me. Hopefully you can see this.
We got it.
Perfect. So hi, everyone. My name is Andrea Schell. I am the principal here at St. Joe's in Brooks. I am in my 22nd year of teaching with Christ the Redeemer Schools. I started off 14 years in High River at our sister school, Notre Dame Collegiate, before transitioning here to Brooks. 5 years ago, I became the vice principal here at the school, and this is my second year in the principalship. Transitioning from High River, which was at that time predominantly a bedroom community of Calgary and a farming community with predominantly Caucasian students, to Brooks, which is the city of 100 hellos, was a very interesting transition for me, and it has just enriched my life in so many ways. So I'm excited to share some of my journey with you today.
Hi, Janelle Petkus. I started out 19 years ago as a science math teacher at St. Joseph's Collegiate. I was here when we started to get a couple students from another country in our classes, and we didn't have specific programming, to when we had an influx of 80 students show up all at once, and we had to create a whole nother building and really learn so much more about it. So I've moved from science teacher to English language coordinator within our school, and the students have taught me more than I'm taught them, I'm sure. So we've learned a lot over the last 19 years.
Our students come from all over the world. If you were to walk into our building today, you would see approximately 50 flags hanging in our social area, and each flag is representative of a current student's birth country. And so we are very diverse. You can see, though, predominantly right now we have students from the Philippines. We have students from around the areas of Eritrea, South Sudan, Ethiopia. Obviously, with the things going on, unfortunately, in Ukraine, we've started to see more Ukrainian students come in. We've got some students from the Middle East, and then Latin America is also very much a draw for us. So I'm sure you'll hear more about this, and I don't want to steal anyone's thunder, but of course, with Brooks having the meat packing plant here, that's definitely a draw for parents, and then they of course bring their kids.
Yeah, so some challenges that have come up, other than just the obvious language barrier of moving to a new country. Cultural differences, of course, I'm sure you're experiencing. Kids trying to straddle two cultures as they are wanting to become more Canadian, getting to know students from Canada, but also trying to keep their own culture, respect their parents' culture, and not lose that. That's something that's very important to their family, of course. We see family reunification challenges, trauma associated with past events. We encounter gaps in education, and also COVID-related gaps in education that have been handled differently in different countries. We see some educational expectation differences from attending school in other countries and then coming into a Canadian school. We at the high school level, we have a challenge with timelines because we often don't get students till they're 16 or 17 years old. And of course, you want to graduate everybody, and there's a lot to do in that small amount of time. Another challenge could be financial insecurity, food insecurity, and just how you work with families to overcome some of these things. And then with new populations of students, not only the language barrier, but then when you're moving away from the alphabet and number systems into a totally different languages like Arabic and Amharic and Tigrinya, and we've had different challenges come up with that.
So many fragile students entering our building. We are approximately 60% English as additional language learners, and we are approximately 78% students of color in our building. So a lot of these fragile kiddos coming in with some very significant challenges on top of trying to learn the Alberta curriculum, which of course is our main mandate. We're also trying to help them learn the language. Sometimes it is literally the alphabet, even though they're 16 or 17 years old, and they want to move on, they want to graduate, they want to go to their post-secondary. Their parents are here, they've moved them sometimes literally halfway across the world in order to get them that better life. And how are these students going to show their competency in the curriculum when sometimes they don't have the language that's necessary to develop that or to demonstrate that competency. So it's something that continues to be a challenge for us. I was not here. I was in High River when we got our first students here in St. Joe's, but the stories that I've heard really were, it was a time of survival. And it was just, what can we do to survive? How can we help? And there was a lot of learning that went on. And what we've noticed over the years is that we continue to learn and we continue to grow. For several years, and even when I first started here in 2015, we thought we kind of had a little bit of a handle on it because most of our students at that point were from Latin America and the Philippines. And so we thought, okay, we learned very quickly how to help them. But then we got all of these refugee students who came in specifically from, like I said, those parts in Africa, like Eritrea, Ethiopia, South Sudan. And it was a completely different shift. And the way that we were teaching our Filipino students did not work for our Eritrean students. And so we had to go back to the drawing board. Janelle talked a bit about COVID. Obviously, that has been a big challenge for us, as we know it has been everywhere around the world. But of course, different countries handled COVID differently and the challenges of isolation differently. And so for us, we've had students as late as this week, actually, start with us who have not been in a classroom for up to 4 years. And so helping them to even access the education system, to feel comfortable walking into a school. We are a middle-sized school for Alberta. We're about 450 students from grades 9 to 12. And so walking through our hallways, it can be congested at times. And for students coming from refugee camps, there can be concerns there. There can even be concerns about things like a standard fire drill, which they're not used to hearing, that bell go off, and that might trigger trauma for them. So really being cognizant of some of the challenges and concerns that these students are having as they walk into our building, and really trying to help ease their minds as they transition to something very new has been a big part of our job, a huge part of Janelle's job. She would be one of the first faces that our students see, and she works really, really hard to help them feel more comfortable in our building. Another challenge for us has simply been teacher turnover. Because we live in Brooks, considered more rural, many teachers want that bigger city experience, which is very understandable. And so, we just start to get onto kind of a wave of understanding and professional development. And then we have several teachers leave. And so we kind of have to then figure out how to help train new teachers while at the same time support the teachers already coming in our building. Our programming space is another challenge for us because, sometimes our courses are full. We have many students registered in them. And so when we have a new student come to us like this week in May, trying to find a place for them that's going to help them academically while also recognizing how that adds extra pressure to our staff is something that we're always looking at.
We had new student number 38 this week. So when you start your programming at the beginning of the year, a lot changes even within the year. So we've even added additional staff before throughout the year. So it's just finding space and getting everybody in place.
In saying that, we love our jobs. It's so rewarding, and there's been significant successes for us. So we're going to talk to you a little bit about those, give you some great stories to help along the way here. So I think we'll start with that.
Yeah, we've had a lot of support from our school division. So right from the top down, and provincial experts that have helped guide us along the way. So we have EAL lead teacher meetings. So our English language coordinator from each school, we meet a couple times a year. We are able to get together, share stories, success stories, come up with what we need to focus on to continue moving forward. And we get a lot of help from the division, who seeks help from the province if needed. I like our student intake process, and I think it's really important to get students in the right place right away. So I have the opportunity to schedule a meeting with new families. The parents come in as well. Sometimes we have translators, sometimes is not necessary depending on the situation. Swiss workers, we have a wonderful group of ladies who work, are settlement workers. We have Portuguese, we have Spanish, we have a lady who speaks Tigrinya, Amharic. We also have a Ukrainian lady who helps out, and we can also get Arabic support. So they are essential to what we do here. So meeting the families, hearing a bit about their story, inviting them to join our school and get comfortable with our staff. Getting to see where the student is at academically in their first language a little bit, and as well as where they hope to go in the future. What is the family's future goals for this child? So through that process, we gather more information. If a student is able to, they may do a reading or writing assessment in English if they have enough English in order to do that. And it helps us to place them, to place students in either ELL programming specifically for language, or whether they would be able to go into some core classes with some English support, and just helps us get a really good idea of what they might need. Behavior concerns, just the parents I find are very open and honest, and that initial information about the kid can be so helpful moving forward.
One of the things that as an administrator, myself and my vice principal have done is we've worked very hard to be deliberate, with our professional development opportunities. So this webinar, for example, would be something that we would encourage our teachers to go to. We have embraced something called SIOP, which is Sheltered Instruction Observation Protocol. It is a highly researched way of teaching EAL students, which actually ends up benefiting all students, native English speakers and EAL students as well. It comes out of the United States, and there's so much literature on the benefit of SIOP. And so we have really dug into it. It is a way of teaching. It is an intentional way of planning and developing lessons so that all students can access language and curriculum at the same time. So you have content objectives and you have language objectives when you're teaching. So we don't have teachers in our building who aren't language teachers. Our math teacher, our phys ed teacher, our construction teacher, our foods teacher, as well as our English teacher and social teachers are all language teachers. And if you walk into our building, you just know that as a teacher, you are going to be teaching language, and not just language that is specific to, let's say, a biology class where all the students have to learn certain terminology, but what we would call tier 2 words, those high utilization words that in the regular vernacular, most native English speakers might pick up on. Our biology teacher in this case would also know that they have to teach some of those words as well. and really learning how to identify the language component so that students are feeling successful. So we've done that. We have worked very closely with partners in the community, such as Global Village here in Brooks. We have the Brooks Immigration Services that helps us out. We have our settlement workers in school who help us out. And they have taught us a lot. They've come in to do professional development for us on things like cultural expectations for education for different cultures coming in. And so really learning, for example, that in the Filipino culture, it is very rare for parents to come into the school because they simply trust that the school is doing what is appropriate and best for their child. And so when we're working to get parents in to talk about a child's progress or to talk about concerns that we might be having behaviorally or otherwise, to understand that this is very new for that family or that culture is helpful for our teachers to understand. So there's not a sense of, well, they just don't care. It's, well, no, there's not that cultural understanding. And so we have to teach that. We've also learned about cultural conflict resolution and the different ways that we can go about resolving conflict when it does occur in our building, which allows our teachers to feel safer, our students to feel safer and cared for, and our families. So that's been very deliberate and intentional programming that we've sought out and brought in to help us as professionals understand the difference, the different cultures that we're working with and how we're going to help support them.
Yeah, so it's really important that when we get new students, we set them up with a peer in a class or maybe multiple peers throughout the day to guide the students, mentor the students through their first couple days, especially. Sometimes those relationships stick. So just really trying to foster relationships and a caring space. Yeah, sorry.
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but I do want to acknowledge that Nikki has a test to write right after this. So I was just wondering, would you be okay to pause your presentation? Let's hear from Nikki because we would love to hear student voice in all of this and then pop back out. Would that work for you too?
Sure, that's fine.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm going to interrupt. So I'm with Nikki. So I'm Michelle Veroba, and I actually teach in the same city as Andrea and Janelle. So they got to fill you in lots of the background in Brooks. So I teach at the Brooks Composite High School, and we have just under 700 students, and about 100 to 150 of those students are coded EAL. So in our ESL program, I have Nikki, I can't see her on my screen, but I just want you to know that Nikki is a driving force behind lots of this work that we have done. So I have to give a huge shout out to her, and she'll give you the student input after I kind of just go through the research piece. So when I was going into administration, I knew that I found out from students that there was and other administration that there was an issue with tensions between the students. We weren't creating the inclusive environment that we thought we were. There was actually a lot of students here tolerating each other, but not a lot of acceptance. So I started a diversity club with some students, and through some things that happened, Nikki and some other students joined us, and we applied for a research grant through the University of Calgary. We met Rahat Zaidi, and we ended up being rewarded $50,000 research grant to conduct research within our school to see how COVID has affected our newcomer population, first and second generation populations. So the methodology phase of that research, we had planning, focus groups, a social media campaign, survey, and an advisory board. And in the focus groups, it was broken up into a sense of community, how students felt within their school, their experience with culture, mental health, religion, and how do we move forward in this future. So during these focus groups, we realized that there was a lot of work that we needed to do within the school. I know that lots of it is hindered due to the curriculum, but there was a bit of a bias even within our curriculum that students were pointing out. They were feeling that they were a little bit nervous about sharing their culture, and there wasn't a space to share their culture as much as they wanted. There was also a bit of a discrepancy between our newcomer population, they felt they were very supported within our ESL program, but our first, second generation Canadians were not feeling the support as the newcomers. So from that, we got the grant, did a bunch of research, incorporate a bunch of things within our school. We actually just recently won a spot to, or we have applied for it, put a proposal together to speak at a conference, the American Educational Research Association conference in Chicago. So myself and other, the cultural liaison from our school and 4 students got to go present there, Nikki being one of those students. So Nikki is going to speak on how she feels what has happened with the research that happened within our school has impacted the students or the school in general. So you could take it over, Nikki.
Thanks, Miss Roba. By the way, she's literally the best. So the way I feel like the research impacted a lot of us students, it really gave us a sense of community because like she said, we were tolerating each other and there wasn't like a sense of coming together. And what it did, it really made us acknowledge that at the end of the day, whether we have culture or no culture, we should all just come together because we all want to do things for the greater good. Like Miss Roba said how a lot of newcomers didn't feel like really welcomed and they felt nervous and whatever. It wasn't just because of the curriculum, but just like stuff like that has to do with like breaks. Like you guys heard how we got Eid off because like for Christmas we had like the holiday and that's like
you can talk to them about that, Nikki, because really. They don't know that because this is so Kim knows about it. She read our research, but the other people that are part of this don't know about the Eid. So you could speak on that.
Okay, sorry, I thought everyone knew. But so basically what happened was we realized that for students who were Muslim, didn't have Eid off or Ramadan off, as like the same way how Christians have Christmas off, they'd have to call in and be marked absent, miss schoolwork, just this whole hassle. And that's not fair. It's the same, like it's just the same celebration as Christmas. And we went up to the board with it and we told them how it's not fair and it doesn't represent inclusion and equity. And we got that day off for Eid, and a lot of schools reached out to like Miss Roba and Mr. PJ about how that was possible because there was exams during that time. But at the end of the day, if you want inclusion to happen, if you want people to feel like your school is a safe space, nothing will stop that from happening, and just having like constant drive. I think it's just been a really amazing experience with Miss Roba and just like the rest of the students in the diversity club, trying to make the school a better place for students. So, yeah.
And we also held cultural days. So if you want to look at our Brooks Composite High School Facebook page, trying to incorporate the students in it as well. And it's been a huge hit. So last year they did a Taste of Nations one before COVID. And then this time they kind of decided to incorporate more dance and we brought some people in from Bazano, like Indigenous culture. And Nikki and a bunch of our students presented to other students within Lethbridge and Medicine Hat and kind of just talking about what they've done to move forward in their social media campaign and how do you keep going? Because they incorporated they decided they wanted a Black Shirt Day. That was part of our diversity group. And that was for the Black History Month. So that we started that a few years ago now. And on the first Black Shirt Day, we had some students wearing white shirts. So it has not been an easy transition for the students but now like this year, Black Shirt Day was great. There was no, but I think it's just creating the safe space for all students and recognizing all cultures in our school and embracing it. And we've come a long way, and that is thanks to our students and the staff has really been on board and our board office. So
yeah, it doesn't happen overnight, that's for sure. It takes time, and a lot of the times the students aren't like disrespectful, they're just ignorant. They genuinely don't know, and that's why it's important to get the teachers in on it so they can give that to their students. A lot of it's generational thinking. We gotta cut that. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Michelle and Nikki. just for the rest of the group here, I had the opportunity to read the research report, which was Lessons from COVID, Empowering Vulnerable Newcomer Youth. And it was from there and the connection that I thought it would be wonderful to have them come and share their experience for that research. So when we take a look at kind of traditional mentoring, which is one-to-one, what I read through that research paper, as well as listening to what Nikki and Michelle were sharing today, is really that concept of they're mentoring a whole school population around their cultures. And that it may turn into being small group and one-to-one mentoring. Just going to open up the table quickly. If there are any questions before Nikki has to go write her exam, please feel free to unmute and ask your questions. I have a quick question for you, Nikki. Are you or the students involved helpful or called upon when you have new students moving into your school? So I'm assuming that Brooks Composite High is not much different from St. Joe's, is that you're getting new students in regularly throughout the year.
Pardon me, what was that?
Just wondering if you've been called upon, or any of your friends from this group have been called upon to mentor some of the new students coming into the school.
I wouldn't say so. But when it just comes to just being a voice for a lot of the students, I would say yes. A lot of students are scared to speak out, and me and like some other girls just try our best to be that voice. Just like when we made the presentation for Black History Month, like just being that voice for them.
Wonderful, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions for these two? Thank you so much, Michelle and Nikki, for joining us. I know that you need to leave, but if you want to watch the rest of the webinar and hear the rest of Janelle and Andrea's presentation, as well as from Deborah and our Edmonton Mennonite Center for Newcomers, please feel free to look at the recording. Okay. Andrea and Janelle, are you ready to pop back on? Thank you for being so flexible.
No, that was great to listen to. Thank you, ladies. Andrea apologizes. She had to step out to a meeting. So yeah, Cultural Week. We heard about your Cultural Week. That was great. We're just in the midst of ours, and so many of the things you talk about are so similar. So it's important to be visibly anti-racist and really work towards those goals for the whole school. And it does take time. But yeah, so many wonderful things happening in all the schools. So our Cultural Week was just hopping. We had a Filipino Culture Day today, and there was karaoke and dancing and traditional clothing, and our entire social area was just buzzing. And my favorite thing was that as I was watching this whole group of students singing karaoke, is there were students from many different countries singing Filipino songs and karaoke at the top of their lungs while dancing together. So it was really awesome.
It's so fun. And once you see it coming together, you're just like, this is incredible. Like, this is what inclusion and is all about. Yeah. Good job. Yeah. We'll have to pop over there maybe one day.
Yeah. And when it's student led, the students take on so much leadership at this age. Parents come in, and then also having staff from different cultures has enriched our school so much. Not only does it help other staff to understand, but just how it can add to the leadership for those students and the mentoring of those students. So it's really powerful to have diversity amongst your staff as well. We've been so lucky with that. So yeah, the Inclusion Club, just all the ways to really appreciate diversity in Brooks, even amongst the city, has been so important. So Most recently, I brought in a new student from Pakistan, and that was actually our first student that we've had recently from Pakistan. And in my mind, I thought, oh, our students are so welcoming. When I bring in a new student from Mexico, there is Spanish kids waiting outside my door to take this student to their class. When I bring in a new student from the Philippines, there's kids just waiting outside my door to find out what grade they're in. And so I was thinking, like, I wonder what's going to happen here. And I had Eritrean students immediately. They're like, oh, I met him playing soccer. He's a really good player. Can I take him to class? And when I went there at the end of the day, there were students from 3 different countries waiting to take this kid to their bus. So it's just amazing how the school can come to be so inclusive over time. Yeah.
Awesome.
I think that's about all. Unless you have any questions. I could talk about this for days. As you can see, I'm sorry. Taking up too much.
It's not so much a question, but a comment. It sounds like whether it's formal or informal, you really have some of that kind of peer mentoring happening, and maybe some cross grade when you say about how when you get a new student from a certain country, others are almost lining up to help them and make them feel welcome and maybe kind of show them the ropes. So I think that's really great to see, even though it may not be formal and they're not matched formally, they're just intuitively doing that, which I think really speaks to the culture of the school that you've created.
Yeah, we always make sure somebody has someone for the day to get them to their classes, because it can be so confusing. And it was about 4 years ago where I really noticed I'd be walking down the hallway with a new student, and somebody's like, what grade? And I'm like, 9. And they're like, I got this, come on. And they grab their schedule. I'm like, oh, I guess I'm not needed here. Have a great day.
I think what I'm finding is so powerful here is just the leadership skills that you're both providing at each school for these students to become voices to help your newcomer students. You know, those that have been established and worked through that, they're naturally wrapping, they're almost like a natural support to the students in the school. And I was just, my second thought was, we're so fortunate to have 2 schools from Brooks that are here today sharing their stories. There's lots of similarities, but there's lots of differences, but there's ways that you two, the 2 schools can work together to help to support all students in the area of Brooks moving forward. So thank you. Okay, if there's no further questions for our school folks, if you need to pop out, don't feel bad. We're okay with that. If you'd like to hang out, we'd welcome you to hang out with us as well. We do have Deborah Coley here from the Calgary Immigration's Women's Association, and she's going to talk to us a little bit about how their association works with volunteering in kind of that mentoring capacity. So we'll turn it over to you, Deborah.
Sure, thanks. Thanks for having me. I assume everyone can hear me. We're good? Yeah, okay, thank you so much. It's been a while since I've been on Zoom from my home computer, and I gave it a quick shot last night, and it was supposed to work, but we all know what technology is like. So as Kim said, I work at CIWA, the Calgary Immigrant Women's Association, and my role there is I'm the volunteer program coordinator. So anytime anyone wants to volunteer with our organization, they all have to go through the proper processes and come through the volunteer office. And we put a lot of safety measures in place to help ensure that our clients are in good hands with our volunteers, especially when it comes to our youth mentors. So just initially, to onboard a volunteer, all volunteers have to do the proper intake, provide a police clearance, a welfare intervention check, as well as attend CIWA's general volunteer orientation session. Once they've done all that, then I take that person and I hand them off to the next staff member. And so when it comes to our youth mentors, I hand those mentors off to Shannon, who currently leads those wonderful volunteers. And the purpose of the youth mentorship program at CIWA is to match the mentor with the mentee for the period of a year, where they will meet once or twice a month. And they've got a wide variety of things to accomplish. We want the mentor and the mentee setting and working on goals together. Last I knew, they still use the SMART goal process. And as well, the mentor walks the mentee through different things like taking the bus, maybe providing support with her to apply for university and grants and bursaries, giving advice on Canadian culture, what it's like to settle. A lot of the time, our mentees themselves have gone through that journey of immigrating and settling in Canada. And now they can in turn take the things that they've learned in their experience and support a youth who has done this herself. And so even with our mentors, we see a wide variety of sometimes ages from 16 through to mid to late 20s. And then girls that have come through the mentorship program themselves even sometimes go on to become mentors, which is incredible. Some girls and women come to us and say, I want to be a mentor because I walked this road alone. And I don't want someone to have to do that alone. So how can I help? How can I support? What can I do? And then they're matched up. All of the mentors go through training and support and guidance as well by mentorship staff so that they're never alone. Trying to think of what else is really important for me to touch on that maybe I haven't. If there is, ask questions. And yeah, Kim, if there's something that I've missed, let me know.
Deborah, can you talk to us a little bit about how your recruitment is going through Alberta Mentoring Partnership? We know that recruiting mentors is down across the province. And so if you could maybe talk to us a little bit about how you're able to attract your mentors to be able to support.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, recruitment for anything, it can be down, but then in other senses, like there's a lot of interest. I find that I get a lot of interest, but not so much the follow through. That's my biggest struggle right now. And so where I go to recruit is we rely heavily on word of mouth. People knowing a lot about the program, knowing what it's like to be a volunteer at CEWA, to tell others and to recruit for us. We post opportunities on our website, which I find can be hit and miss as far as gaining volunteers. Volunteer Connect is a great website that gains a lot of interest for us. I think that's one of the number one things. And then of course the referrals that come through the Alberta Mentorship Project, which is fantastic. We always appreciate those. Other referrals can come through even the schools, I think, in the city, sometimes the guidance counselors, you know, the older girls in grade 12 and stuff looking for opportunities. We've got, it's like little angels somewhere even at the University of Calgary and Mount Royal University telling people about these opportunities. And so sometimes I get these requests and someone like, someone at, you know, UMC or someone at MRU told me I needed to apply. I don't know who, I don't know how, that's why I call them angels. So I thank them for that. So lots of different ways of recruitment. There has been other times too where recruitment comes a little bit different and in other aspects. So for example, at another role I held at CEWA when I was facilitator for a different program, I would go into different niche stores or Starbucks and places like that, or the community newsletters, and post advertisements, posters about the program itself. And when I did that, I didn't necessarily have the client in mind. I had local residents in mind who would see the poster, who would see the promotion material wherever and go, that sounds like something awesome. I want to volunteer and help out. And in turn, it honestly generated a lot of interest from potential people. So sometimes even those volunteer inquiries came from the most unique of places, because someone saw the program itself and saw that it looked incredible and wanted to help out. So it's worked.
Any questions from the group? Caroline, I noticed you were unmuted.
Oh yeah, I just had a quick question. So I'm curious about the matches, like how do you have kind of a strategy that you use to match your mentors with your mentees? And do you ever have kind of matches where either where the mentor may not be and may not have been a new immigrant, or is that pretty much your mentor base? So I'm just curious about the matching process that you use.
Okay, great question. I don't actively work in the youth matching mentoring program, so I don't make the matches myself. And when I answer this, I hope I'm giving accurate information, but I also know that I might be a little mistaken. My understanding is they do make matches sometimes based on where the mentor and the mentee come from within different countries. So sometimes that's a positive match. Other times they do an interview for both, and they learn about the areas of interest, areas of growth. And so they try to make matches based on that as well, where if a mentor has a lot of assets in one area and the mentee wants to grow in that area, then they can match them up according to that and the other interests that they have. I would assume, yes, there have been times where maybe there isn't the best match, and it's always a matter of yet. Because I do know that I have had conversations through my time as a volunteer program coordinator where I'm like, listen, I've referred 20 people to you. Where are they all? Like, what's going on? And I've been told just that at this point in time, because of certain things we're looking for, there isn't that match. But the volunteer knows, and they know that they're waiting for it. And they're happy to wait.
Thank you.
I hope
like
that helps.
Yeah. Well, and I like the fact that it sounds like there's no one set strategy, that it's really individualized and finding out what is it that mentee needs, and then deciding how you're going to match them. And also that idea that maybe there's not a good match yet, because we know what the research says about matches that end abruptly and unexpectedly, and how those can actually do more damage than good. So really better to wait until there's a good match than to kind of create more, more stress.
Yeah. And even for that rule too, to help reduce the abrupt ending, is to really reinforce with our volunteers, even as I am onboarding, we are looking for a year-long commitment. Like when people are like, I just want to volunteer for 3 or 4 months, but I want to be a mentor. I'm like, probably not the role for you unless I can talk them into a year. But when they know as soon as possible in that recruitment process, because they meet with me, we have conversations, I will sometimes connect the potential volunteer with staff even before they do everything to onboard them, so that they can have those conversations to help reduce the likelihood of not being positively matched. And I've been at CWA since before the mentorship program began. Actually, I remember when it started as like this pilot program. And I know that sometimes there are abrupt endings, like it's going to happen because human beings are involved, and staff always try to have a backup and someone to put in place. Staff have also recognized, or the volunteer or the mentee, that this isn't the fit that they had hoped that it would be. And then they try to put the place as a plan in action as soon as possible, so that our girls aren't left in limbo for a few months. Because sometimes perfect matches, they're great on paper, but we all know they don't fully flesh out.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Deborah, as you're explaining that, it reminds me of sometimes when we talk to teachers that are getting to the point of retirement in their career, they're not
Mhm.
looking to do a full year commitment.
Yeah.
And so, getting into a larger organization like Big Brothers Big Sisters might not be something that they're looking for at that time. And so I know I've heard Caroline mention it, and Al as well, where we just suggest to them, go to your local school
Yeah.
and connect up and see if there's a way that you can get involved with any of the mentoring initiatives that they have in the school, because sometimes those commitments can be a little bit shorter, or it can be based on as we heard Michelle's school and Andrea's school talk about, sometimes it's just sharing a little bit about their cultures, or
Right.
some of their tips and tricks that they have for getting settled. So
Yeah. And I like the idea of referring elsewhere. So I like to, I can't possibly know all the volunteer opportunities in the city, but it's really nice to be able to tell someone, well, this might not be the best fit for you, but let's look at where else you can go. And doing those referrals elsewhere, to me, that's important, because just because someone approaches CEWA to volunteer doesn't mean that I want to hug them all to myself, although we have those people we want to do that with. It's like, let's find you the right position is the best, most important thing in my world. Yeah. If not us, then where?
any other questions for Deborah? Thank you, Deborah. I knew
Thank you.
through our emails, Deborah said she could talk volunteering for CEWA with passion and all day. So all three of our guests could have probably taken up all of our time today. So thank you. If you'd like to get a hold of Deborah or any of our other guests that we had, just reach out to us. We'll give us our contact information at the end of the webinar, and we can get that information out to you. So Deborah, if you have other commitments, please don't feel that you need to stay, but we would welcome you to listen to our next guest speaker and join us for some more questions.
Thanks. I can stay for a couple minutes, and then I have a puppy dog that's actually not on screen right now, but he's dying for his after work walk. So I'm going to take him out soon. Thanks.
I'm going to let Caroline introduce our next guest, who will be joining us through a video clip as I set up the shared screen.
So I had the pleasure of doing an interview with Joseph Lurie from the Edmonton Mennonite Center for Newcomers. He was not able to be here in person, so he agreed to have an interview recorded.
Joseph,
and he's going to talk about the Mennonite Center has several different mentoring programs for youth, and he's going to talk a little bit about those different programs and some of the strategies they've used, what have been some of their challenges, and he has some recommendations. So enjoy.
I work with the Edmonton Mennonite Center for Newcomers. I've been here for the last 15 years. And so my role is I do coordinate 3 programs. One is known as the Sky Club. SKY stands for Support for Kids and Youth, where we do tutoring, mentorship, some recreational stuff. And then the other program is called Safe Families. The Safe Families is a program that discusses about prevention of domestic violence, how to be in healthy relationships and not be violent. The last one is called LEAP, L-E-A-P, Leadership Enhancement Activities Program, where we recruit participants who are, about less than 5 years in Canada. Those youth who would want to get exposure to developing some skills, getting some experience through volunteering, and also learning through facilitated workshops on leadership. when we started this, it was because a lot of the parents who came with teenage kids and even younger kids were still living as if they were back home, where there was the aunties and the uncles who were, you know, in the neighborhood to support, but there was nobody. And people went to work and left the underage kids alone, and Children's Services was having trouble with that. The youth adapting to school was difficult. So many of the kids were in the refugee camps, not in formal education. And so because of their age, they would be thrown to high school or junior high, whereas they have not even completed their elementary school. So it was a lot more easier for these kids in high school to quit and go get into wrong company. So we thought, we sat down and said, what is it that we can do? And we realized that these young people didn't know the system. They have no really supports in the community. Everyone was almost fighting for themselves. And in the school, they felt like they had no place because others knew what they were doing. They had the language too. They were struggling with the English language. And so things were really very hard. And we said, okay, for us to be able to develop the confidence in them, we need to get people to work around with them. And that was how it started. Let's work with our young fellows in the community so that we can develop confidence in them, so we can let them know about the system, so we can also bring the parents and say, you are important in the life of your kids, let's work together. And so that included learning things on social skills, learning things on leadership, getting the support of tutoring, getting an opportunity to come into a recreational facility and get all those opportunities, get somebody to take them, be with them, listen to them, and be a bridge between them and the parents. So that was how we started the initiative. We have adults who are mentoring the youth, but we have also the majority of those youth that we concluded that we are good role models in the life of these other young kids, and especially some of those who have gone through the program and have gone to university now or are in college. And we said, well, talk to these other fellows and say, how did you make it? You are not different from this person. We used to run after-school programs in schools, and then we lost a bit of that funding, and the volunteers were not from the U of A. The time was not working for them. So we decided to discontinue the in-school one. So it now happens only on Saturdays. We were not getting the cooperation from the parents in terms of dropping the kids and picking the kids from the program. So transportation was a problem. We had to work around that with the support of the United Way. And they gave the Mennonite Center a van. So we used that van to pick most of the kids and drop them off also at the end of the day. So that was one of the challenges. The second challenge was we didn't have money for food, and we only had snacks that we could give. And so we asked parents to provide them snacks so that nobody goes hungry and is not listening. But they were not able to provide much of that. So we again teamed up with the food bank, and we are picking stuff from the food bank. That was really of help. The other challenge we had was we relied on initially retired teachers and the U of A students from the CSL program. But then the longer hours that we took simply let us lose the U of A students very quickly, because from their CSL program, they were only coming to do 20 hours, which are almost nothing. And so when they're beginning to build that relationship, the 20 hours are done, and then most of them will be gone. Some few will remain behind. So the inconsistency of having these familiar faces for a longer time was also another challenge. The other challenge was for us to be able to keep them and for them to get fully what we said we are going to provide them, the recreational activity. Getting a gym space was a problem. And so we again worked with the U of A, with the CSL department, and they were able to provide us with some little funding where we were able to use part of that for paying the gym at St. Alphonse Elementary Junior High School. So now we've been using that up to June. We'll be using that, and then we'll have to run around again to get another money to renew that or get another space elsewhere. We are very lucky to find partners that are very cooperative and they are willing to, give us a try and say if it is a good cause, we are going to support it. We are thankful to all the partners that have been able to put in, and then also some of the mentors who come from U of A who get touched and they listen to the stories of these families and individuals. And so even after their 20 hours, some would remain. To the mentors, a lot of them have gotten to learn really so much about the life of some of the immigrant kids that have come, because we started as a Sudanese, program, and we open it up now. It's, everyone is welcome and so on. So they get to learn about these stories of the hardships and the resilience that these kids have developed. And so you ask yourself and say, if I'm faced with a challenge, should I be complaining or should I be developing those resiliences as well? So they've had good lessons that they've learned and good stories that they've heard that have made them more stronger and more understanding than anything else. From the mentees, of course, we have seen a lot of good stuff. One is the kind of confidence they've developed, the decision-making process where they don't make decisions that get them into trouble. There's still a minority that do that, but that is a minority now. It's not the majority. The other thing is they've kept relationships with some of the mentors, and they can call them anytime. That confidence and the support in tutoring have given them, the latitude to perform very well in school. If one is to start something similar, the first thing is do your homework by identifying those needs and whether you'll be able to get supports to get those who need the supports to be coming to where the support is going to be. Number two, you think widely about partners, because you are not going to be able to do it by yourself. There are going to be so much that you need and you don't get them, but with some partners, you will be able to get that. So collaboration is key. The other fact is to include the parents, bring them and show the results that you are seeing and that they are seeing, because that has helped us when they're able to see these kids excel in school, develop good relationships with others, and talk about the future. Now we have a few parents who are dropping their kids off and picking them from the program. Our resources, like I say, has been the combination of the partners and also, initially the retired teachers brought so much, to help us out using their skills and experiences. Of course, our celebration has been very key. We celebrated performance of the kids. We invited the parents. We awarded, certificates of good conduct or, good role model and so on. That motivated the families, that motivated the participants. And those are some of the few things that could be done. But like I said, there are so many resources that you can always get. And the best way to get it is to develop that partnership or collaboration with many of these experienced organizations.
It was really exciting for me to hear how passionate Joseph is about the work that they've been doing around mentoring and also the results that they're seeing. So he was talking, I think, and he mentioned it in the clip as well, about just the number of young people who were getting involved with the law and the justice system and how difficult that was. And through this mentoring initiative, they have really seen a big decrease in that. And they've really also gained the trust and the commitment from the parents, which was kind of something that an unexpected outcome from the mentoring initiatives that they've started.
Okay, Caroline, I think that we've done lots of listening, And,
Yes.
but I don't want to scare anybody off, but we'd like to do a couple of small breakouts so that you can share your story around how you're supporting refugee, immigrant, and newcomer youth in your school or in your organization. What are some of the challenges, successes, some resources? So if you pop out to the breakout room and then pop back in, we're going to share some other AMP, Alberta Mentoring Partnership resources with you before we head off tonight. So Shannon, if I could get you to pop us out into breakouts for about 8 minutes, that would be great.
Yep, you got it, Kim.
We only have 2 people in room 2. I see Courtney, Kim, and Al. Okay.
There's only 3 in room 1 too.
Okay. So
So I don't know if we lost people or if some of the people, oh, and it doesn't look like Peter's been assigned.
Yeah, he just came back in the room.
Okay.
Hi, Peter.
Thank you.
Hi,
Thank you.
Peter.
Sorry, I accidentally dropped it and got back in. Thank you.
Oh, perfect.
Just make sure he gets in a room there. Yeah, and then Hassan,
did you want to stop recording right now?
yeah, just give me 1 second.
Perfect.
Coming back.
Welcome back. So Caroline, did you want to just have lead the conversation?
Kim, I think we're just waiting. Group 2's coming back right now.
Oh,
so
okay.
Perfect.
looks like we should all be back.
Okay. So we thought we would just have each breakout room share some of their conversations or, questions, things that came up. So I think we're a small enough group that people can just unmute, or if you're more comfortable putting something in the chat, but we're just curious, what were some of your conversations? Did any questions come out of that?
Well, it was really good in our room because both Peter and Kim are working on different parts of the same initiative with Kindred Spaces working with CVE and with 2 different high schools down there. And the idea of getting a brand new program off the ground, and there's all these pieces that you want to be doing at one time, but it essentially comes down to that buy-in and knowing which teachers you need to be networking with, which students are kind of your go-to students. And then right at the very end, we just started kind of branching into the parent part of that, because Kim, I mentioned that you and I were just at the Alberta School Councils Association. And for me, that was a huge breakthrough. It's like, oh, we've been talking to teachers for years. We've been talking to students. That connection with parents all of a sudden opened up so many more doors to what's going on in communities, especially a lot of the rural communities that attended that conference. And like Kim said, the junior highs, the programs that are in the junior highs are getting a lot more parent buy-in. It's when you get to the high schools and then they're a little more independent, it gets harder as they get older, and I really liked it when Brooks was talking, and then actually Courtney brought up a really good example of something in Edmonton that's not school-based, but they have a very they have a portion that parents can get involved with this free play initiative. So I think as you're building these initiatives out, finding a connection to get parents as part of it, so have a component that's parent based, I think is going to be that winning component. Yeah.
And Al, that's such a good point, because I know a couple of elementary schools in Edmonton that were not fortunate enough to have Big Brothers Big Sisters mentoring involvement, but they had a couple of really active parents, and parents actually started the mentoring initiative, which was really having adults come in and read with kids for an hour a week. But the parents kind of ran it with just a bit of support from the school. So you can sometimes find some really great resources in that parent group.
And I really appreciated Al's point about the parental involvement. And I'm a former high school teacher, but I did do junior high, and I can tell that parents are much more involved in junior high than they are high school. Like, I have a high school kid and I don't know what he's doing half the time, right? So my point to say is there's also a language barrier for us. Like, we have access to interpreters. So when we're trying to get consent for the kids, if they want some mental health counseling, we have to obviously get consent because they're minors. And we have to actually include an interpreter very often. And so to get the parents involved is another barrier for us, in that there might be a lot of language barriers in that too. Not to make an excuse, but to say that's another component for us.
Yeah. Another layer in consideration
Another
when
layer,
you're thinking about this. Any other comments from your conversations or questions that came up? Not that I have the answers, but somebody might.
It looks like Astrid, Bo, and Connie had some technical difficulties when they were in their room. So I'm not too sure if they got any time together to chat or not.
Do we want to just take a look at some resources? Take a quick look at some of the resources. And I think, I don't know if it's fixed yet, but certainly at the beginning of the webinar, there were some issues with the AMP website. Apparently a fatal error had occurred, whatever that means. So I don't know if it's been revived, but we will just talk a little bit about some of the resources. So one of the resources is a resource that was created a few years ago now, specifically around mentoring refugee, immigrant, and newcomer children and youth. And it was created with input from many different organizations from across the province, who were talking about some of the things that they had done and what they had success with. So the resource is really kind of broken down into small chunks that looks like, again, what are some of the challenges that our immigrant, refugee, newcomer youth face. And it was very similar to some of the challenges that the speakers brought up. Again, Joseph talked about assessing what the needs are. There's a section in here about that, about assessing needs. There's also a little bit, some tips on involving community. And then it really gets into kind of the tips for recruiting and tips for training and maintaining volunteers. So there's all kinds of little kind of helpful hints in that guide. It's really concise. It doesn't go on for pages and pages and pages, which for most of us is important. There's also sections that look at different kinds of mentoring opportunities, and many of them group opportunities. So there's some information in there about a conversation club. So some of the organizations that had input into this document had some of these initiatives going. So, a club that was focused on, or mentoring that was focused on communication and improving improving the English language skills. There's also a section on a homework club. And I know Joseph's organization has sort of a homework club tutoring piece. So there's lots of really great information in that resource. It's pretty concise. It's pretty easy to go through. So that's one that you can take a look at if you're interested. And Kim, do you want to talk about the, oh no, that's just is that that's a recorded webinar that we did that kind of talked about where you might find mentors. So there's several recorded webinars on the website, and it's something that you might want to go and just peek at.
Yeah, so the first link I shared is the webinar on the resource that Caroline was talking about. The second link the third link that I put in there is actually a Mentor Month webinar, and it was 3 young ladies from CWA that actually talked about their experience as mentors and mentees. So We had Tanya Taranjo, who was our Indigenous Engagement Lead, and mentee Yeshel and mentors Gianna and Carlotta talk about their experiences as they were working through their transition from high school into post-secondary.
So for those people who are looking at mentoring initiatives in schools, there's a few resources that you may or may not be familiar with that speak to that. So the framework for building mentoring relationships in schools is a really great starting place. It kind of takes you through what you need to consider, who might be important to have involved in that. It has some really great templates that help you think about who is in your community that could help support that. So again, it's a great starting place if you're thinking about a mentoring initiative in your school. Kind of similarly, there's a similar document that's for a community-based mentoring program. So that may not necessarily be a mentoring initiative that's going to take place in a school. So for community organizations, that's another resource that's got some really great templates. It kind of walks you through the different stages from when you're thinking about it to what you need to do next. So those are a couple of good starting place resources with, again, planning templates. The Teen Mentoring Toolkit is specific to schools, or it could be organizations as well, that are looking at having older youth mentor younger youth. So it kind of goes through, it's like the, I call it the DIY guide to teen mentoring, because it really, again, starts off with thinking about what are the goals of this? Why are you setting up a teen mentoring initiative? And then it talks about, again, that planning, who would be involved. And then it goes all through, you know, how would you recruit mentors and mentees? How will you set up your matches? What kind of training do they need? How are you going to provide ongoing monitoring and support? What does match closure look like? How do you evaluate whether it was successful or not? So there's sections in that toolkit for each of those areas. And there are also some templates. So for example, there's a template of a permission letter. So rather than having to start from scratch, you can at least start with the template that's there. They're all in Word, so you can change them around. There's like little interview questions. So if you decide you want to give your mentors and your youth experience with what an interview might look like, there's templates to do an interview with your mentors. There's, if you want your mentors to keep a bit of a journal about their mentoring experiences, there's a template for a mentoring journal. So lots of other kind of attachments that you can use, so you don't have to start from scratch. And both the framework document and the teen mentoring toolkit are in the final stages of revisions. So before the end of the school year, those will be ready to go so people can use them for the upcoming school year. So they'll be updated, new information, all the links will work. So the important things that you need when you're looking at a resource. So those are some really great ones to get you started. And then also the online mentor and mentee training. So some of you may be familiar. AMP has an online mentor training. It takes about an hour. You can stop and start. So it keeps track of where you are. So if your students or your young people don't have a full hour, that's okay. When they complete it, they get a certificate. It covers, it covers what is a mentor, what isn't a mentor. It talks about some of the, the differences that they can make. It talks a little bit about brain development and kind of what they can expect from mentees of different ages. So that's something, it's free. You just go onto the website and sign up, and it's there for you. So that's a really important and helpful piece as well. And I don't know if people are aware, the other thing that I just wanted to touch on is that there are career and technology studies courses for high school students where they can gain credits for mentoring. So there's 5 1-credit courses And the online mentor training actually covers a bunch of the outcomes that are in the first course. And also another resource that we don't have up here, the teen mentoring, high school teen mentoring handbook, is another resource that also covers a lot of the outcomes in the first and second course. So again, if that's something that you want to know more about, you can look on the website or you can reach out to Kim or I. Okay, that's my quick 5-minute resource. Now I'm exhausted. So if people have questions, go ahead and ask.
Any questions for Caroline?
I know that
Okay.
was a lot, so our contact info will go up at the end. So if you have any questions about resources, please don't hesitate to get in touch.
Some of our plans for the future is we'll continue to do some more of these webinars. We host a summit in October. We've done it for the last 2 years virtually. We're planning to do an in-person session in October this year, and it's for mentors, mentees, adults, and youth. And so more information. If you want to know more information about that, if you subscribe to our newsletter, you'll be able to get that information through that venue. In January, we do Mentor Month activities. We go and visit lots of conferences and conventions in February, March, and then we'll have some more webinars in the spring. So again, if you want any of that information, please reach out. As we plan for our webinars, we need your input. So the 4 webinars that we put on, and as well as some of the sessions from Summit, comes from the input we get from your survey. So if you take a few minutes to fill out our survey, it would be greatly appreciated, because we do use that in planning. And this has been a long-awaited one. We've had lots of requests for how to support our refugee, immigrant, and newcomer children and youth. There's the QR code if you want to subscribe to our newsletter.
The newsletter will also let you know when the updated resources have been posted. And they also have some really good information about other things that might be happening across the province in the world of mentoring, or other really great resources that are outside of AMP. So just a little plug for the newsletter, and you don't get emails 3 times a day or anything.
The newsletters come out every 2 weeks on a Wednesday afternoon. And you might have a little difficulty signing on to the newsletter right now because our website is going through some technical difficulties. But again, reach out to Caroline, Al, or myself, and we can get that information to you. You'll also be getting a post-webinar email from Shannon with the recording as well as the survey link if you didn't get a chance to fill that out today, because I'm seeing that it's 5:30 and we don't want to encroach on your time after that you've set aside for us today. So thank you so much for joining us. And if you have any questions, please ask away.